Google Calendar reservation systems. I've made a few of these, you might be aware. What's different about this one? Well, it's newer, and two, it can be completely automated. If you don't want to touch the code, you really don't have to. I'll start this tutorial by showing you what to copy and paste, and then there's a drop-down menu. You click a few things, you hit submit, and you will have automated booking, automated reservations. It's focused on day, single day or multi-day, so for hotel or rental type of situations, but it's all automated. It will go to a calendar, it will book the request if it's available, and if there's already an event scheduled, it will send a email stating that and asking them to look at different dates. Either way, they get a confirmation email, you get automated, automatic, easy peasy calendar booking. Then, once I show you how to use all of that, if you are interested in the code, in customizing it, and looking under the hood a bit, I'm also going to do that. I'll walk you through all of that as well. Like always, the code and all of that stuff, all the items that I have used are in the description. Feel free to take a look, to use it, to abuse it, to mock it, whatever you need. And I hope you get to use this. I hope it makes life easier. You build something super awesome. Make sure to tell me about it below. But let's go ahead and get started. Here we are in Sheets. Here's our beautiful sidebar. I already selected this information. Here's a user, hint me, that submitted a reservation request. And here's how I got here. Reservation, show sidebar. Now, let's go through some of the code I want you to be able to edit and mess around with it yourself. Also, I want to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and Tools, Script Editor. I want to make sure the first thing I do though is this will not automatically load when you open up the application. When you copy and paste in code, it doesn't load automatically. If you wanted to, you could go to on open and hit run. If you wanted to always open automatically, you want this menu option to be there always when you open up this sheet. What you can do and what you're going to want to do to be clear with this code is go into edit current project trigger. So again, edit current project trigger, and I'm going to add one for on open, yep, head event source, yep, spreadsheet, yep, on open. So when the spreadsheet's open, I want this on open function to run. And what that on open function does, and we'll take a look at it next, is it's just creating that menu so we can access the sidebar. The other trigger you're going to want, if you already have this code, you can do it now. If you're going to be writing it along with, then you want to wait. But you want to do on form submission. And when we're going to want that to happen is from the spreadsheet, not on open, on form submit. So when someone wanting or requesting a day submits the form, I want on form submission to run. And that's what checks the calendar and all of that. And I'm going to hit save on that as well. So now I have my two triggers ready to rock. I'm going to close that. Let's go ahead. Here are my global variables. This is the spreadsheet application. This is referring to our current sheet. I just grabbed the last row, last column. Script properties are all the stuff we save from the sidebar. Letters are used in dropdowns, all right? And here's me grabbing all of the calendars that, well, you have, whoever's installing or using the code. All right, on open, just like I said, spreadsheet app, get UI, which is the user interface, create the menu, reservation app, show the sidebar, and what show sidebar does, when I click menu, reservation app, showed sidebar, it runs this function, show form sidebar, which is going to be, oh, it's right below it. Yeah, which is this. So show form sidebar, what's that do? Well, it grabs the HTML file form right here. And I called it form, but it's a form for you. It's for the person who owns the spreadsheet. And this form is full of all that information you're filling in. Start date dropdown, end date dropdown, name of client. Okay? So what the code does, it grabs this HTML information, and we will take a closer look at that, and spits it out into the sidebar to show what we have, well, in that sidebar. So now, once you are looking at the sidebar, what is going to be available there? First, let's talk about the dropdowns. How it's grabbing that information, create dropdown menu all items. This one says, create this string, drop, and it's blank. It's just empty text variable. For, I usually use var, but let also works, same, well, it's kind of. I is going to be equal to 0, I is less than the last column, and I++. I equals I plus 1, so you're adding 1 each time. What I'm saying is count up by 1 and go all the way to the last column. What do I want you to do? Well, get letter, all items, I. Get letter is another function. That goes down here and grabs the appropriate letter, right, for the column. What we're talking about is columns, A, B, C. This function even can do double letters. For if some reason you have a 48 column spreadsheet and you have an AF or something like that, it can do that as well. So it spits out those letters right here, and then it says all items 0, 1. Well, all items is going to contain that entire first row of values. So your form usually sets that. The questions from the form are usually set there. All items is created by get headers. So var all items, sheet, get range, yada, 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 right? And this is what's going to grab the entire first row right here so we can use it in the drop-down menu, B, start date. Now, when does get all headers run? Zoop. Let me go into the form here. Get all headers is ran right here. So it's in the code part of the HTML, below all the HTML. It's run right here. And what this does, it first says get all headers, so Google script with success handler. So first, hey, get all headers, and the code goes, what's that? Oh, here it is. It gets all the headers, and then it returns create menu all items. Well, what's that? Zoop. It goes through this, and it gets all of those headers, and it puts them in one big long string with a letter and with some HTML option. And then it spits it out. Once it spits it out, once this is spit back out into the form, what's this form do? Get all headers, output questions. Okay, where's that? Right here. This only runs once this has successfully returned. Output questions. Now, output questions will be, that's output calendars, output questions, all items. I create this variable all, create element by class, drop questions. Get element by class. So I'm getting all of these HTML elements that have the class drop question, drop question, drop question, drop question. Those are right here. B, right? They all use the same stuff, the header of the first row of the spreadsheet. So I grab the end date, name of client, email, start date, and what do I throw into them? Well, I loop through each of those. So all items I, keep in mind, all is the start date. Then zoop, end date, zoop, client name. I change the inner HTML to be the all items. All items is what we made, that string of letters and questions from this, the first row of your spreadsheet. And that's how they get populated. Calendars is going to be similar, so I'm not going to walk through it as much piece by piece, but what I'm doing here is I am saying grab the client's calendars, right? And that's you right here. Get the calendars of the account. Loop through them, loop through all those calendars, and create this menu. I also have a thing here where I'm just checking if the placement of the calendar has changed. So if you saved a calendar, but then you deleted the one above it, I'm making sure we still put out the right calendar if you have saved one. That's what this if is doing. It's checking that if you maybe deleted a few calendars, that even if the place changed, we can still get the right index of your calendar that you saved before. But this is the main show here. And again, it is outputting, it is creating a string of the calendar names and throwing it into some HTML, and then it's going to return it. When it returns it, right here, what gets run? Output calendars, zoop. Output calendars will have calendars, document get element by ID, calendar index, inner HTML, calendars. So we're setting up the drop menu right there. Then once we know that drop menu set up, and only then do we ask the update side values gets props for sidebar. The reason I am waiting to, this shows you all the sidebar save data. Shows all saved info for the sidebar. Okay. The reason I wait until this is populated is because this output calendars, get calendars, remember we checked for the right calendar first. So I'm waiting to make sure that we still have the right calendar. They didn't delete a calendar and it got shifted. And then I say, okay, Google, computer, whatever, let's go ahead and get saved properties. What is a property? This is a confusing term. My OK Google just thought I was talking to it. My Google Home. That's awesome. This is OK Google cancel. I could edit that out, but I'm really going to leave it. All right. Script properties. This is where your info gets saved. Okay. This is what is saved when you click here. Click. That's where it all goes. It goes right here. Boom, boom. Now, that is used by this. We get the save properties. Zoop, zoop. Get save properties from sidebar. Okay, properties and keys is an empty object right now. Var data, script properties, get properties. So I'm just grabbing all of the properties and throwing it into this variable. Now, var key in data. So what that's going to do is each piece of data. So we just got this array of junk. Each key in data, we're going to say script get property key. Okay. So get properties, what I'm doing is using the properties key. I'm looping through this data object. We didn't use this name key before. I could have put get var Fred. I'm just saying the computer, for each thing in this, I'm going to call it key for now. So properties and keys, this is what that is. I just had declared it. Key, so whatever key is, that's going to be equal to the actual property. So that will be like, just to be clear on this, script properties, start index. So the key there is start index, and it will be equal to 1. I am looping through and grabbing that property information and then spitting it out. Where does it get spit out to? Well, again, back here, right? Save properties from sidebar, update sidebar values. So what is update sidebar values? Zoop, right here. This looks complicated. It's not terrible. So document get element by ID, start date, end date, client. These are all of our items up here, right? ID. Notice they have classes, but they also have ID, start date, end date, client. And what we can do with that is say, hey, select index. Index is the place in the drop menu that data is located. So we have what the user saved before. We are going to grab that index and we're going to say, okay, get the element start date, select an index, and select the start date index we saved. So if I had saved start date as B earlier, which would be index 2, or that would be index 1, because it starts at 0, 0, 1, 2, then it will populate to that automatically. Same here, end index. And we can see this by looking, I'm flying all over the place, at our script properties. Start index is 1, client name index is 3, and index is 2. And that's what's getting spit out here, right? Because remember, it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, client name is 3, end date is 2. So that's how that's getting populated. What these two lines mean right here is or. So for some reason, if this goes askew, if this is all messed up, if they've never used this form before, this is just going to be set to 0. So this is an or. It says, hey, if this isn't working out, can you just make that 0 or make that no info? And this is what fills in that stuff when we load. Let's head back over here. And get letter we already talked about. Now let's talk about how that stuff actually gets saved when I click save. This is somewhat more of a simple process, honestly. I make sure to delete all of the original stuff when I click save. It's more of a fail-safe, a safety mechanism. I delete all of those properties. So all this stuff that we save from the user, I delete the second they hit save. Now, what do? Script, set property, very similar to get property. I'm going to name this property start index. And what is it going to be? It's going to be sidebar start data. Where the heck is this coming from? Well, it's coming from sidebar data. What is sidebar data? Zoop. So the user is over here in their form. They love their information and they click submit. Once they do that, what happens? Well, let's take a look at our submit button real quick. So here it is, button, submit, on click, sidebar submit. This is a function. I'm telling the computer right here, when this button is clicked, you're going to run sidebar submit. What's that? Zoop. And notice this. Zoop. So we run this function, we say run save sidebar, and what data, what info are we shoving into save sidebar, this function in code? Document.forms0. Now, document.form0 is certainly not random, and this is actually something I messed up when building this. Notice the forms part of this. What it is doing there, it is grabbing the information between, let's see if I guess I can't get it all on this screen. All of this, form to form. I'm going to zoom out actually, I want to show. Here, all of this. It is grabbing the information from the form stuff. What's a form stuff? It's a better name for that element. Select, 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 select. Those are all text area, buttons, radio buttons. It's grabbing all of that info for us. And I'm using 0 because there's only one form, right? We don't have multiple forms here, so all I really need is this first form. And I'm saying save sidebar, give save sidebar all of this form data. Let me get back to a normal, more zoomed in view. Okay, so sidebar now has all of this data, and it deletes first the old junk, and it says, okay, start index, sidebar, start data, plop, sidebar, end date, plop, and I save that to end index, because it's not technically the end date yet, right? It's the index of the end date, because if they selected B, well, that's column 2. So really what I'm saving is the column location of this information. And that's what I do all the way down, right up until here. The reservation message, right, where you put, hey, great job, you reserved, and the conflict saying, please give me money, reserve again, right? These messages aren't saved as indexes, they're just saved as the words you typed in there. And then one other one that's a bit different is get column, this is the ID of the calendar, and I just use that for accuracy to make sure we have the right calendar. A calendar's ID is specific and unique to that calendar. No other calendar on the Googles has that ID. This is only used for testing. You should not do that. I should delete this now, actually. That was just running it for form submission, pretending like when I hit saved, it should also pretend like a client book something. Let me save that. All right, now let's get into that booking stuff. So on form submission, sheet get last row. I do this to make sure I do have an updated last row. Remember again, this is our header. This is a trigger. Edit, current project trigger, right here. On form submit. And what do? Well, on the submission of the form, I run this function. So the second the user hits submit, what happens? I grab the last row, because if you submit a form, guess where that data goes? To the last row of a spreadsheet. Var entire row. So this is the last row location, and then I grab the entire last row's range. Once I have the range, once I know, like, oh, it is column A through F. Once I know that, I then have a new variable, all values, and I say, okay, entire row, get all those values and stuff them into this variable, all values. Then what? Well, I'm not done, because what that returns is it's called a multi-dimensional array. So it would return something like this. It says, okay, you have 1 row and 8 columns or whatever. So even though I only have 1 row, it still returns like I could have 9 rows and 4 columns. I don't want that. So I'm telling it right now, I only want that first row of stuff. That's all they have anyways. And I shove that into all values. Just that first row we got. The first row we got is the only row we got. All right. And now, submission. This is a new object. This object, again, is for the form submission. This is when a potential customer is trying to book a reservation. I'm making this and I'm giving all these variable names. So submission, start string, that's new date. Let's get rid of that. I don't use that. Bit of error testing we're doing. All right. It wouldn't have mattered. It's correct, but I don't use it. So start is going to be equal to the new date, and we're grabbing that index value from all values, right? So here, all values. All values was all of the information in the row that was just submitted. Well, in the row that was just submitted, here's my date. And what column is it in? B, right? How does it know that? Right here, I told it, right? I told it start date is at index 1. Remember, 0, 1. So it knows where it is. It knows because I set it here and the code created that index telling it. So it knows where that is. I grabbed the entire row of values. Now that I have that whole row, I'm saying, hey, script properties, get the property start index. What is that equal to? Start index will be equal to 1 because I told it right here, start index is at B. The computer says, okay, B is 1 because we told it to. So it says, okay, 1. Get the value at the location 1 of all values. And that's going to be a new date. So this would normally just come out as text that looks like a date. I'm saying no, make it into this special code object date. Same with end, I do the same thing. Client name, okay, all values, script properties, get property, client name index. Where is that from? Here. I said D name. The computers did 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so they mean 3 when they put that. We coded that. And so it says script properties, client index, and so it returns 3, right? That's what it saved up here, a 3 in that place. And then it says all values. Okay, all values is the row of info that the client submitted. Well, what do I want from that row they submitted? 3. Okay, what's 3? 1, 2. Oh, wait, see what I just did? 0, 1, 2, 3. That is the client's name. Great. Boom. Save it. Save the email message. That's just a placeholder like it says. Make sure we got the right calendar. Status, that's a placeholder. And the last column. And we use that because the last column could vary by row. Just trust it. If we use a universal one, you can get stuff writing over itself. After all of that, finally, we get to check dates. We can say, okay, do you actually have the chance of being booked? Check date, submission. Submission is all of this data, right? I named it submission. Now, function check date submission. var conflict. It is what it says it is. I am looking for a conflict. What's this equal to? Well, submission dot calendar get events. So I'm saying, hey, Google, give me all the events. Submission dot start, submission dot end. Submission dot start, submission dot end. Between these 2 days. Okay? Give me all those events between these 2 days. And just for a second, let's magic my way over. I'm going to look at this. Get events. So if you're wondering where I get a lot of this code, it's Google App Scripts. Here's my get events. It explains to me start time and end time. Oh, I need a date. I'm going to put it in here. And what does it return? It returns a calendar event array. Again, this is where I get all this app script info. So if you're looking to do different stuff with this, this is your resource. All right. Oh, there's my Google search. Okay. So back to this though. Now that we have the conflict, right? We have our events. If conflicts are greater than 1, that means if they're greater than 1, someone has already booked that. So we're checking that. So if conflict length is less than 1, right? So maybe I should change this. If conflicts less than 1, no bookings start reservation process. Remember, // is just a comment. It doesn't affect the code. I'm just trying to clue you into what's going on there. So if it's less than 1, reservation functions run. We'll go to that in a sec. Else, meaning, it's more than 1 or more than 0. Someone has booked. We're going to get range, last row, submission, last column. So again, this is the last column of that row that was just submitted, and I set its value to conflict. Right here. This one's set to reserve, but it can also be set to conflict. And again, status is right here. Conflict, reserved issue. It's to let you know what's going on. Has that worked? Is there any emails out there already? All right. So we set that value to be conflict. We then say submission email message, which is right here. Remember, we just had a placeholder. And what am I going to do? I'm going to set the email message, script properties, get property, conflict message. Whatever message you put in here, that's what that's going to now be equal to. And then the status is then equal to conflict. And we'll use that in a minute. So let's first do reserved days because we'll get to email send also. So they're successful. There was no conflict. Reserved days. Boom. All right. What's past submission? Submission. All of this stuff. All right. So in this now, we're going to do var event. And what's event equal to? Well, we're creating a calendar event. Submission.calendar create event. And again, I got this straight from Google, their app script stuff. How do you create event? Well, what do I name it? I name it after the client. So this is your personal calendar. I'm putting the name of the client right there, the person who submitted it. That's going to be the name of the calendar reservation. If you don't like it, change it. There's the code. I could have just put string booked. That would also work if you don't want anyone else to see the client name. But then you'd have to use the spreadsheet to know who booked that. Regardless, I'm leaving it as the client's name. And then here's the start date and the end date. What I am doing now, I made this a variable event because I'm checking now, hey, was this successful? So if event exists, hallelujah, we made something. If it exists, well, I'm going to do that. If it doesn't, else, I'm just going to set it to issue. Because I'm not sure why that would fail, but if it does, I don't want you to think there's a conflict or something like that. That's saying, hey, maybe you look at this, I don't want you to lose money over it, right? Maybe it is available, the computer is not being nice to us. So that's when it says issue. Now, for event, set range, yep, same thing. We're going to put this status at reserved, right? It could be issue if there's an error, shouldn't be. Submission email message is now reserved message, the one you created, and confirmed. Now we're going to run email submission. Just like we ran it earlier here, the difference between there being a conflict and not, if there's a conflict, well, we don't create the actual reservation in your calendar. We just go straight to the email. Email, oh, this testing stuff is, I'm going to delete this after it. It's literally me testing. I'm just putting some numbers at the end of this so the emails don't stack on top of each other. Don't worry about it. I'll get rid of it. All right, so var HTML, I'm going to start where you'll actually see stuff. HTML email, get HTML file submission. This is like the form. What the heck is HTML file submission? Or get HTML file. Submission. What's HTML file? Zoop, boom. All right, so we're running this code. Now, we're going to create the actual file we spit out in the email. Get HTML file submission. First, I'm going to make a start string. So remember we have those date objects that we used to book this? What this is doing, so it doesn't look super weird because the dates look super weird, all it's doing is saying, okay, let's convert this into a human readable date. Get the month, get the date, the day that is, get the year. The year comes out in 120 because it's set to be 0 at 1900, which is why I add 1900 so humans can read it. Then I have this other variable here. That will drive me nuts. There we are. Then I have this other variable here, which is HTML email. HTML service, create template from file, email. We did this for the sidebar too. It's the same thing, except that for the sidebar, we called it form, right? So create template from file, form, create template from file, email. What is in email? We'll get there, but first I want to tell you, here's my HTML email. Here's HTML email message title. What's that going to be equal to? The status that we set, depending on what happened. So submission.status. What's the message's body? Submission.email message. And that will either be equal to your conflict message or your confirmation reservation message. So put that into the email. Start string. Okay, that's the start date. Zoop, formatted. End date, formatted. Submission.client name. Boop, that's going in the email. Evaluate means, hey, tie all that stuff together, get the content, and spit it back out. Let's take a look at this email, just so you kind of know. This is all the styling stuff. When you see this style, I put it in there to make things look nice. If it intimidates you, I wouldn't worry about it, or you can just delete from style to style, but I just put it in there to look nice on both these files. Okay, so notice here, message title. Wait a minute. Message title, all right? And email, message body. Hold up, message body. You see a pattern here? Start date. This is where it places it. It looks kind of weird, but that's how it knows to smack it down right there. That information is placed. Boom. Whoops, boom. All right, So now it's going to return this email right here. We're going to use mail app send email to submission.client email. Well, what's that? Oh yeah, it's our submission object. It's the client's email. Subject, reservation, and then I'm going to add the submission status. Again, this testing thing is just for me. It's going to be gone when I'm done with the tutorial. And then what's the body? Well, it's the thing we just made. It's that whole thing right there. Let's go ahead and do some demoing of the entire system now. All right, so here's I already have this set up and saved, right? I'm going to go ahead then and head over to a reservation, a form. Let's take a look. Here's my fancy form. And let's say I want to book between the 25th and the 27th. And my name is going to be Scott Summers, hint Iceman. And my email, well, I'm going to make that my email so I can demo this. And let's hit submit. All right, now what's going to happen? Zoop, that's the code. Here's the script. And it already says reserved, right? Instantly. Almost. Not instantly, but close. It goes real fast because it is a computer. So now let's look at my email. Well, here it is. Let me hit refresh. Boom. Reservation confirmed. And we look forward to seeing you on a magical adventure. Magical adventure is highlighted because I was searching for it. That's how I get all these emails in the same spot. And boom, their date's the person. Okay, now what if there was a conflict? Okay, let's go look at that situation. Wait, I want that gone. Submit another. 26th through the 28th. And my name will be Henry McCoy, who's the beast if you're keeping track. And this is my email. Submit. And let's hit refresh, maybe. Boom. Reservation conflict. And here's please try different dates. There is a magical adventure reservation during this time. Boom. And the info. And let's look at a calendar. Here we are, and there it is. Kurt Kaiser, I originally had that before I did this. There's my calendar. Here's Scott Summers, right? And there's no beast or McCoy because there was a conflict. And it's as easy as that. It's all automated. It's all there. It's all ready to go for you. Just remember you want to set up those triggers and remember to hit submit when you have this all ready to go. And you're done. You also can always put your email in this itself if you wanted them to see a different email or your website link, things of that nature. So I hope this was super helpful and makes your life easier. It was fun to build. Walk through the code, check out the video. Feel free to use the code for whatever you would like. Also, please hit like. Please hit subscribe. It gives me warm fuzzies. It makes me want to do this more often, and it is kind. With that being said, you should tell me about all the cool stuff you did with this below, all the nice coding stuff you made. Or maybe you didn't code a ton, but maybe you used the sidebar to be more productive, make your life better. I don't know. All of that stuff. Anyways, ta-da! Oh, all the code's in the description. Ta-da!